Wink, wink. Proverbs chapter 30. Let's see, got to get my notes open. Proverbs chapter 30, down here in verses 15 and 16, we have these verses. There, the horse leech hath two daughters, crying, Give, give. There are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four things say not, it is enough. The grave and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. Now, Sunday night, I preached a sermon out of this passage, and I made comment that that phrase, it is enough, you can find it repeated by four people in the Scriptures. Just so happens that here is four mentions of things that never say it is enough, and it just so happens that there are four persons in the Scriptures that also say that phrase, it is enough. And if you looked at Sunday night, and I'm only mentioning it because if you didn't hear Sunday night, when I do a sermon like this, it has a tie-in to the previous sermon I preached. This will, of course, you'll be able to, this is independent. It'll stand on its own today too, but if you wanted to hear kind of a part one introduction, that would be last Sunday night on our Bible Baptist Church, Lupton, Michigan, on our YouTube channel. But who remembers who said it is enough that we covered Sunday night? It wasn't Jonah. I know everyone's going to think of Jonah when they think of Casey Klein anymore, but it wasn't Jonah, huh? Jacob. Jacob was the one in Genesis chapter 48 that said, it is enough, as he was convinced finally that his son Joseph was alive. Well, today we're going to go to Exodus. But before we go there, let's re-look at this passage and see the theme and how it ties into this phrase, it is enough. The horse leech hath two daughters, crying, Give, give. So you can never have enough. You're always saying, give me, give me. Ashamedly so. That's kind of a prevalent attitude in America, is what can I get more? Give me more, give me more. And it's rare to meet somebody who's satisfied with anything. And he who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing. He who is not content with what he has would not be content with what he would like to have. I think that's profound. If you're not happy with what you got, you won't ever be happy if you got more. That's a profound truth, a biblical truth. And this horse leech hath two daughters, and they're both crying, Give, give. They want more, give me more, give me more. And that ties into the second part of this Bible verse. It says there are three things that are never satisfied. And so if you want give, give, you're never satisfied. And four things that say not, it is enough. So it is enough as being connected with never being satisfied and always wanting more and more. Now there's something to be said for an attitude that wants to strive for improve. And I want you to disconnect those two things out of your head. You always want to improve. You always want to strive for doing better. It's okay to work hard and to make more. That's all great and good and should be a part of your life, is how to improve your situation, improve your family. So that's step one, that's good. But then step two is, what I have today is exactly what I need, and thank you, Lord, for what I have. Step two is, if I'm on the job or I'm at home, I can lay my head down, and even though I could do better and things could do better and things need to do better and I'm working towards whatever, you can still lay your head on your bed at nighttime and say, Lord, what today was just perfect. Thank you for everything you gave me. And whenever you start to complain, just hit that pause button and turn it around and say, God, instead of complaining, I'm going to say thank you for what I have today. And maybe that'll change your attitude a little bit. Maybe that'll help your life be a little bit better. The horse leech hath two daughters, crying, Give, give. There are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four things say not, it is enough. What I would love for people to know Bible Baptist Church of is this is a church that's filled with gratitude. Listen, when you think of some people, you think, hey, that person's never satisfied. When you think of some person, that person never has a good word to say. When you think of some people, it's like they're always complaining, always bickering, always bitter, always mad. Nothing good ever comes out of their mouth. And you realize that, hey, the way they are, that they're showing you all the time, that's how they handle themselves at home too. Don't let that be you, and don't let that be a reputation of the church. Thankfulness. This verse continues on. The three things that are never satisfied, the four things that say not it is enough, and then we have these serious things: the grave, the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. The grave, obviously, is they have to build fences around the graveyards because people are dying to get in, you know. I heard that when I was 13. It stuck with me since. Is that a dad joke? That's a dad joke. The graves are always, until the Lord comes back, you have a destination with a graveyard. And that's just a fact of life. And it could be when you're 10, or it could be when you're 100. Only God knows. And it's appointed unto man once to die, period. No, not period, but that's a fact of life. And after this, the judgment. The grave, the barren womb. The barren womb's never satisfied. We've prayed, my wife and I have prayed for a few ladies that have had barren wombs in the first 5-10 years of their marriage. And in these cases, God actually heard our prayers, and those ladies were given children. But for some that didn't, the barren womb is never satisfied. You can find thankfulness and joy, but it's a thing that if you lose a baby who in the womb, I mean, that'll stick with you until the day you die. It's never satisfied. The earth that is not filled with water, the fire that saith not, it is enough. Of course, the fire is, they put burn bans on certain days, because if that fire that you set starts to misbehave, you can't just say, now stop it now, and it'll just go out. Those firemen, man, they make a killing. They make a living off those days that people burn on burn ban days, and the fire spreads it a little bit, and that fire gets a little bit out of control. And those firemen, how much they charge to come out and put a little fire out? I mean, like $500, $700. You don't want that. That fire, it never says it's enough. Once it starts, it will eat that thing, whatever it's eating. It will eat it until it's gone. And that's the only time where it'll say it's enough. So that's the idea here. Let's go over to Exodus chapter 9. Exodus chapter 9. And we're going to read about a man that fulfills this. Now, last week we looked at Jacob. Jacob was a man who did say it was enough. He looked at a man that he finally was convinced to find rest in God. And he was finally convinced to say it is enough, and he went on to close that chapter of his life with his son Joseph. This man in Exodus chapter 9 is Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says this phrase, it is enough, as you look down here in verse 28. You'll see that Pharaoh does say that phrase, it is enough, but Pharaoh fits the context of what we were reading in Proverbs chapter 30 in the sense that he was never satisfied. He said it was enough, but he never meant it down in his heart. And verse 27, we'll see, and Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, for it is enough that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. How many plagues were there? Do you remember we did this memory palace? Anyone remember that memory palace? I do, because I did it. But anyone else here remember that memory palace where we went through the 10 plagues? We're going to change it up just a hair today, because back when I did it, it was Brother Sordor that was the door greeter, and we got Brother Don, who's the door greeter today. And unfortunately, Grace is the only one sitting over on that side, so she's the one that gets to get picked on today. But it goes like this: we're gonna get the 10 plagues, and we're gonna place them in order, and you'll be able to, by the end of the day, have the 10 plagues just like that. And so number one is, if you're coming up the church through that front door, you know, we usually have a bucket outside of that front door, and it has salt in there for the winter days, so that we can spread that out and help take care of the ice problems. But if you can visualize in your brain as you go up to that bucket and picture there that it's full of ice or water, and then that water turns into blood. And that will identify that the first plague that they had, that Pharaoh was given by Moses, was the plague of turning the water into blood. The second plague would be as you came through the door and Brother John is there to greet you. And of course, Brother Sordor works better because Brother Sordor he would give candies to the kids, wouldn't he, when they came in? Didn't he used to do that? So we're going to leave it Brother Sordor, if you all know who that is. Because you're not as cool, Brother Don. You don't do that. So I can't use that example. Brother Sordor would reach in his pocket and he would pull out candies for the kids and he would hand them. So instead of candy, just imagine he's pulling out frog legs. And he's giving frog legs to the kids as they come in. They crunch them, chew them, yum, yum, good. Here's a little salt to go with it, if you please. We go over to the third, and again, sorry, Grace, but you're the only one over there today. That's your choice. You chose the spot. And she is just itching her head like crazy and uncontrollably, can't stop because she has lice in her hair. Sorry. So the third plague was lice. Fourth plague is we go into the back room, and we got back there Russ, and we got James back there today, and of course they're not in a good. They're fighting today. They're not happy with each other, and imagine that door was shut, and imagine that room was filled bottom to top with flies. And I say they're fighting because it's important to know that was the first plague to where God divided the Israelites apart from the Egyptians, and he set a time there where the flies would not go halfway over to the other side. So imagine that room left and right. I'll let them bicker over who's the Egyptians and who's the Jews. But they had half of that room. We'll call Brother Russ. He was the Egyptians. They had flies over on the left half, and then James, the right side, didn't have any. The fourth plague was a plague of flies on the land. The fifth plague is as you come up here to the pulpit, and you can imagine here behind this thing is I'm kicking this dead cow that's lying underneath this thing. You can hear it going, "Rah, rah." And that was the murrain of the beasts. And the cows were slaughtered, and then if you can imagine, I'll pick on myself this time. You can imagine me sitting back here, and I got this thing on my head. Imagine I got a lot of them. They're big old boils popping out everywhere. And that was the boils were on the flesh. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the sixth plague. Seventh plague as we get over to Mrs. Heaton on the violin or on the organ or on the piano, and she's just jamming out on "There Shall Be Showers of Blessing." She does. And the seventh plague is when God sent hail and thunder and rain down on the land. The eighth plague is we go back to Brother Arnie, and he's running around in and out, back and forth on his little wheelchair, and he's crunching over all of the locusts that are hovering around him and flying. He's back and forth, crunch, 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 crunch. Brother Arnie is where the locusts are, and that's plague number 8. And you go out into the hallway, and as soon as you open that door, the lights just all dark. Not a single thing you can see. And of course, number 9 would be the plague of darkness. And as you ladies or men go into your bathrooms, we still divide the bathrooms out to ladies and men because that's the two genders that God gave us. The men over in there, the ladies over in the other. And imagine going into your bathroom and you look into that sink and you can imagine your firstborn child dead in that, as a baby, dead in the sink, to give you the 10th plague of the death of the firstborn. Now, let's walk through them backwards. I never could do that without this little palace, but the 10th plague is over in the bathroom, death of the firstborn. The 9th plague is in that hallway, and that is the darkness. The 8th plague is over there at Brother Arnie, the locust. The 7th plague is up here on the organ with Mrs. Heaton, the hail. Sixth plague is back here on me, boils. 5th plague is right here, the murrain of the beast, the cow. The 4th plague is back over there in that room, the flies, divided. 3rd plague is on Miss Grace over there, the lice. 2nd plague is coming in through the door, the frogs with Brother Sortor, and the 1st plague's outside, the water to blood, just like that. We just gave them backwards. water to blood, frogs, lice, flies, murrain of beasts, boils, hailstones, locusts, darkness, death of the firstborn. What number are we at here? Exodus chapter 9. You scoot up on here to verse 22. It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with hail, and very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt, since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb of the field, and brake every tree of the field." Where are we at? Right over there on 7. "On the 7th plague, Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron, and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous. I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, for it is enough that there be no mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer." The 7th plague. The question is asked, why didn't he say this on the first plague? Why didn't he say this on the 2nd, or the 6th, or the 8th? Follow through with this thought. He said it on the 7th. Well, if he said it on the 7th, why is it that we have an 8th, a 9th, and a 10th? You know what he did? Let's go over to chapter 5. I always like to give the context of where we're at and give the story so we can understand our verse a little bit better. Exodus chapter 5, this is the first. So in Exodus chapter 3, chapter 4, Moses is up on Mount Sinai receiving instruction from the Lord, saying, Moses, I'm going to call you and send you out to the land of Egypt, and you're going to deliver my people, and you're going to tell that king of Egypt, you're going to tell you, let my people go. And in Exodus chapter 5 is the first confrontation between Moses and between Pharaoh. Who's Moses? Oh, he's a nobody. He's a pretend son of the king. He's adopted in. He gets driven out. He gets prison sentence, exiled, and he comes back. And who is he? He's a nobody. Who's Pharaoh? Pharaoh is God in the flesh. Pharaoh was a deity, according to their tradition. And you have this little nobody who's standing in front of this God, small g, and there's going to be a confrontation. And let that, first of all, remind you that when you have the Word of God on your side, even though you stand in front of the most mighty, powerful, most famous, richest man in the world, he's a nobody. You give him the words of God. If God before us, who can be against us? And if God sent you to give the gospel to the president, then you give the gospel without fear and trepidation to the president. A friend of ours was over in Scotland. He got to stand before the King of England. And you know what he did? He gave him the gospel in that 2 minutes he was with him. Our flesh just doesn't like that, but I have a hard time witnessing to the people I like, my neighbors. I have a hard time just creating a conversation with somebody just on an airplane or at a bus stop or at a train yard or just out at the grocery store. And you know, those are all things we all deal with. And don't beat yourself down. If you're that way, that's okay. We all deal with that. But get the idea here that Moses was given a charge by God, just as we are. He was given a charge, go preach the gospel. So here he is, standing in front of the king. Chapter 5, verse 1. And afterward Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. So there's this question of, you'll read it here, about Pharaoh's heart. And you'll read how Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And the question is, well, who did the hardening? Wasn't it God or was it Pharaoh that hardened Pharaoh's heart? And of course the answer is, yes. It was both. But the question is, well, who did it first? Did Pharaoh have a choice in the matter? Or was it God that said you're hardened because you won't have a choice, and so I'm going to make it that your heart's hardened, and so I'm the God, you will listen, you will obey, and Pharaoh didn't have a choice. That's what's argued. And the first meeting between Moses and Pharaoh, or AKA between Pharaoh and God, was in Exodus chapter 5, verse 2. Before anything starts, Pharaoh, it presents his heart attitude about the God of heaven, and what does he say in verse 2? And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go." Who made step one choice about rejecting God? Pharaoh. And then from there it becomes a battle, and God decided this was... The thing with God is that you always have a choice, but you don't want to be in that particular moment of time when God's ready to pour his wrath out on somebody and you be on the receiving end. But it's key to remember you always have a choice. Pharaoh had a choice. And his choice was right here in Exodus chapter 5 and verse 2. And then as we read through the chapters, you'll see that God hardened his heart and Pharaoh hardened his heart. What God did to Pharaoh, what God did to him, because Pharaoh's heart was already hardened. Pharaoh already had made the decision for himself. We get here in chapter 5, verse 2, he says, "Who is the Lord?" So this is pre-plague. And we get on down here to... where does it say about the rod and the snake? That's here, isn't it? Or is that in chapter 6? I didn't have that reference written down. Nah, it's here somewhere. I think it's in chapter 6. I think it's in chapter 6. Oh. I think it's in chapter 7. Chapter 7... Here's the next confrontation between Pharaoh and God. And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so. So verse 9, "Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, Show a miracle for you. Thou shalt say unto Aaron, Take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh, before his servants, and it became a serpent." So here's a mini miracle, a mini plague. What was Pharaoh's reaction? Who hardened whose heart? Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, the Egyptians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. You get this sneaky feeling when God calls them magicians. You get the sneaky feeling that there was a little bit of hocus pocus involved. But if it really happened or not, that does not matter one bit. According to the story, the devil has a certain power about him, a certain occultic power that he has, and it's just as real as the strength that you have. His is just bigger. And if he's able to do that, okay. I certainly believe the devil has a power about him. But what was the point to this is that, of course, Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. And what was the Pharaoh's reaction? He hardened, verse 13, his heart was hard, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart. He hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. We get on here to chapter 7, verse 22. This is the first plague. We're out at the water to blood, 7, verse 22, water has been turned to blood. Verses 19, 20, 21, the fish in the river died, the river stank, the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. And what's Pharaoh's reaction? Magicians. They did so with their enchantments. Why would they do so with their enchantments? Why wouldn't you ask your magicians to do the opposite? Hey, we have a blood problem. We have a water problem. Can you find us some water? Oh yeah, Pharaoh, no problem. We can turn that blood back into water. No, you can't. You can throw some dye in there or whatever they did. I don't know. But the fact is, at this particular time, even if they did turn water into blood, what were they doing? They were helping the plague. It's like a little bit of craziness going on here. What was Pharaoh's reaction? His heart was hardened. We get on down here to the next one, and we see here in chapter 8 is the frogs. They're coming through the door there, but Sortor and his frog legs in his pockets. We get on down here to the frogs, and verses 4, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what did Pharaoh do with the frogs? It says in verse 6 and 7, the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. Again, hey, anybody can do that. Now that I got frogs, there's a million of them to pick from. Make them disappear, please. The magicians did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron. Okay, Pharaoh's starting to see something finally by plague 3. Or just plague 2. Sorry, plague 2, but we're on point 4. He finally gets to see something that, hey, there's something special about this. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron. Now look at the whole progression of this. And he says, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people. I'll let the people go that they may do sacrifice unto the Lord. Okay, we're okay. We're at the second plague, and that's all I need, and I'm ready to let the people go, right? And Moses said unto Pharaoh, glory over me. When shall I entreat for thee and for thy servants, for thy people, to destroy the frogs from thee and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only? And then there's another key word that shows up in verse 10. And he said, tomorrow. We've heard Mark Rogers sing that song for years. One more night with the stinking frogs. One more night in sin. I had a wonderful time with them last night, so Lord, let's just do it again. Go look that one up. One more night with the frogs. Why in the world would he say tomorrow? I don't know, but the Lord grabbed a hold of that, and you'll see the Lord repeat that word in the next several chapters here. You'll see Pharaoh coming to Moses and saying, I want this gone, and Moses will just turn around and say, okay, I'll take it away tomorrow. Tomorrow, be it according to thy word, that thou mayest know that there is none like unto the Lord our God, and the frog shall depart from thee. And then when that does happen, what does it say down in verse 15? Does Pharaoh keep his word? He says, I'll let you go, okay. But because he's like, you ain't going to do it, you can't do it tomorrow. And when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart and hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. Plague number 2. What you see here, and I don't know if I'm going to go down through every single one of these, because you can go through every single one, and you can see this. You can see that Pharaoh had a habit in his heart of hardening himself against the Lord, of turning his heart away from what God wanted him to do. The third one with the lice, that's in chapter 8, verse 18. That's the first one that the magicians tried to copy the work of God, but it says they couldn't stand before God. They said, quote, this is the finger of God that made that lice. And they couldn't do it. And what did Pharaoh do? His heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them. Verse 19, 8:19. And we got the flies, chapter 8, verse 25. Pharaoh called for and said, go ye sacrifice to your God in the land, in chapter 8, verse 25. Did you see that? Pharaoh says, I want you to go, but you go sacrifice in the land. What is that? A compromise. Pharaoh says, you can go worship your God, go do what you want, but just go down into Goshen and go do your thing down there. And he says, no, Pharaoh, we got to go into our land and sacrifice over there. And Pharaoh said, nope. And he hardened his heart. Verse 32. Oh, look, yeah, here's one. In verse 30, 31 here. Look at verse 29. Moses said, behold, I will go for thee and will treat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people. When? Tomorrow. And it happens every single time. You get on down to chapter 9, you have the marine and beasts. Verse 7, Pharaoh saw that there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead, and what did Pharaoh's heart do? It was hardened. See, what am I pointing at? I'm pointing at Pharaoh has a habit that's destructive. He's got a thing in his heart, this is his heart aimed. He's got a thing in his life, it's called his heart, that no matter what happens in front of him, he has chosen, and his habit is that he's going to harden it against this God of the Israelites. You say, how could somebody do that? That's a hard one. Because we're not dealing with just a preacher preaching and there's an accident followed by another accident followed by another accident. You ever had those? A series of unfortunate events in your life, and a smart person turns to God and says, "Oh God, something's going on here. I need to make sure I'm right with you." He didn't have accidents. He had these things that there's absolutely no way possible a man could be involved with it. The water, the frogs, the lice, the ants, the marina beasts, the boils. There's no way possible this is an act of nature, because we're dealing with the God of heaven. And yet every single action of the way, he's like, no. I'm holding on to my gods. I'm holding on to my religion. I'm holding on to what I believe, and I won't let this go. And his habit, his heart, just got harder and harder and harder. I've wondered this. I said, how long did those plagues last? And originally, I had a thought once in my life ever, period. I had a thought once where I thought, well, maybe because these plagues are kind of a type, there's some carryover into the tribulation time in the book of Revelation. And I had a thought, I said, well, maybe these plagues were like 3.5 years long, like the plagues of the tribulation. I thought, well, then maybe if they were 3.5 years long, maybe that's why Pharaoh's heart was hardened and it kept getting harder, because how can you go from one to the other and not give in? How do you go from miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle when it's affecting you and your life is being destroyed and your life is being ruined? How can you go from 1 to 2 to 5 to 7 and not submit? I don't think it was 3.5 years. I think, because it talks about how Moses was 40 when he got put out into the wilderness. He was 80 when he started this rebellion against Pharaoh. And he was 120 when he died. Very round numbers. I don't think there's room in there for 3.5 years of waiting. I think that if you add all these times up, I think it's probably about a 40-day slot of plagues, with maybe some waiting time in between. So maybe 3 months total. Maybe. But it was fast. It was fast. In particular, when you got to these last ones, it was clear it was fast. When he gets up to this 7th plague, we're back to our text, chapter 9, verse 28, "Entreat the Lord, for it is enough." I'm just kind of reminding myself, when he saw that Nile River turn to blood, he didn't say, "It is enough." When he saw frogs jump over the whole land, he never said, "It is enough." When he saw lice get on his own magicians and on his family and no one could stand up before God, he never said, "It is enough." When he saw the flies consume, and flies are nasty. They're nasty. And when he had billions of them come over his land, "It is enough." Nope. Never said it. When he saw his beasts die out on the field, did he say it is enough? No. When they saw those boils come up on everybody's flesh, did he say it's enough? He never said it. He finally says it at the plague of the hail, when he sees his wheat and his barley get out in the field, that gets destroyed. He finally says, "Oh God, what have I done?" And he says, "It is enough," finally, but it was a fake one. It's a fake, "It is enough." He didn't change. His habit didn't change. He just kept right on going. If he had said, "It is enough" here, you know what he could have prevented? The next 3. The hail destroyed a lot, but there was still something to eat. But man, those locusts came in and they took everything out. It's like them rabbits out in our garden. My wife did all this work to plant this big, beautiful thing, and it's all gone because of the rabbits. Well, we killed one this morning, thank God for that. Finally. Got about 200 more to go, probably. He could have prevented them locusts swarming. He could have prevented that night of darkness with that deep depression. And he could have prevented, finally, his own son to be killed. if he had agreed with the Lord and said, it is enough at number 7. But you know, number 1, Pharaoh's kind of fickle. Pharaoh's kind of fickle. He changed his mind every step of the way. He says, here it's enough. And he says, oh, no, it's not. After 10, when his son died and they sent his son away, he went to the Israelites and he said, you can go now. Go, get out of here. And what did he do? He changed his mind and went and chased him. Cost him his life. He's kind of fickle. Hard heart is mentioned the first time in your Bible here when it's connected with Pharaoh. It's used about 43 times in the Bible. 20 of those times are connected with Pharaoh and the Egyptians. You know, this bad habit connected with Pharaoh was a hard heart with his bad habit. And what do I want to preach about all this? As I'm looking at my clock here, I need to get to the point I wanted to preach. And that's, as much as I read Pharaoh and I wonder, how could this possibly happen? Well, I also kind of look at us. And I look at our bad habits, and I ask the same questions. Do you have a habit that's destructive to you? To your family? To your health? To your church? I've had bad habits, and they were bad. They put me into a depressive cycle. And what I do with them, same thing Pharaoh did. Just harden your heart. You know it's wrong? Yeah. Yeah, you know it's wrong. But you just don't care, harden your heart. Let's look over here at Proverbs chapter 21. I'm going to see 2 things, and I want to be done as we close out today. I'm a preacher, so I'll try to preach to the heart of the people I'm preaching to. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 1, he that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. What happens if you have a bad habit and you harden your heart to it, and you harden your heart to it, and you harden your heart to it? If you harden it and harden it and harden it, each successive time will decrease your chance of getting it right. And it'll drag you further down and further down and further down. And Pharaoh did it 10 times until his destructive habit, whatever it was, killed him. How many of you have a habit? A thing? Listen, what am I going to name? I ain't naming nothing. How many of you have an act? Maybe a relationship? Maybe your life goal? Maybe your desires, your drive, and it's destructive. And you know it's not right, and you harden your heart, and harden your heart, and harden your heart. I've had them. I've had it happen to me. I've gone through death. I've gone through downward cycles. I know this. There ain't no one in here who doesn't have a bad habit. I know this. Let's look at the contrast of this, because this is destructive. Did you know there's a contrast? Did you know God doesn't expect you to be perfect? Ish, sort of, kind of. Proverbs chapter 24. Verse 16. See the contrast? For a just man falleth 7 times, yet riseth up again. But the wicked shall fall into mischief. You see the contrast? You say, you perfect? No. I know you're not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. You know what I know about bad habits is eventually they come out and everyone knows about them anyway. So Brother Dan was joking about me with my kids, and like, yeah, I got 6 little cameras recording every single thing I do, and they'll tell you all about me, at some point in time. Something will come out. That's just the truth. Your life goal, what should a life goal be? Well, that's to not be a hypocrite, to be the same you are here as you are at home, as you are at work. Amen, amen, amen. Is that hard to do? It's impossible. It's impossible. But what's the just man falleth 7 times and riseth yet again? But he that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, just like Pharaoh. How many times do you have to hear something that you know you're doing wrong and yet you never get to where you're saying it's enough? It's enough. I've had a couple moments in my life where I've had that downward cycle, and finally I got to this point where it was enough. You say, what do you do with that? Well, the renewal is in Jesus Christ. The hardened heart is destruction, but the renewal is inside of Jesus Christ. Remember David? You can't get worse than David, folks. Murder, adultery, lying, cover up. You can't get worse than David. I'm not going to ask, but I don't think there's anyone here who's done an adulterer, murder, cover up. Don't raise your hand, please. Psalm 51:10, create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a right spirit within me. Isaiah 40, verse 31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That song starts to play in my head right away, that Sunday school song. 2 Corinthians 4:16, for which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish. Why is your outward man perishing? Mine, we're just going to die, period, to begin with, right? But if I make bad choices, I'm going to hurt myself and I'm going to kill it even better, right? A lot of times, my tummy hurts because I ate too much ice cream. It's a bad life choice. It's good in the moment, man. I loved it in the moment. But bad life choice at the end of the day. A lot of times it's my own fault, but though the outward man perish because of my sin, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. I'll close it up there. My time's up. Pharaoh showed us a destructive, bad heart that created a habit, or maybe the habit caused the heart. But he was just like, hey, anytime the Lord wants me to do it, no. I'm going to get through this thing, and I'm going to make my own choice, and I'm going to get it done, and I'm me, and no. Destructive habits are destructive. Be the righteous man that falleth 7 times, yet riseth up again. See, how do you do that? Well, everything starts with Jesus Christ. Everything. It starts and it ends with Jesus Christ. It starts with a relationship with Him to know you're saved. It continues on with a renewal, constantly being in Jesus Christ, constantly having renewal. It's helped along sometimes. Sometimes it's helped along by the brethren around you. Sometimes it's helped along by, if you were to come to me and say, I need help, hey, I will be there to help. If you need to go to someone else and say, hey, I need help, go to your brother and ask for help. Sometimes that's what you need, but it's all done in Jesus Christ. That's where the healing starts. That's where it's going to be done. That's where you're willing. Are you willing to stop and take a reset on your life and say, hey, I don't want to get to plague 10 and then send them out. He lost his son, and then he lost his own life. I don't want to get to that point. I want to reset. I want to get in my heart and repent before God and say, God, show me, help me. I can say, thank God, there's been a few times in my life that God's done that for me. And without that, without Jesus Christ, this man here would be in the pit of despair, maybe literally, without Jesus Christ. God, thank you for this morning. Help us to have a heart to serve you. Help us to evaluate our own hearts before you, to learn this lesson from Pharaoh about it is enough. To ask and wonder when. God, it's impossible for us to change, Lord. Our dependence is on you. It has to be. I can't change nothing. I don't change nothing. I don't make myself better, Lord. That's you. You're the one that does that. God, I don't change nothing. None of us can unless it's done through Jesus Christ. Father, you help us better in the short and in the long term. And God, help us to put our hearts and minds on you. Lord, thank you for this day. And bless